All right, today we're going to dive into a pretty fascinating piece of technology called the light system. We're breaking down two recent studies that make some really bold claims, everything from changing your aura to actually altering your cells. So let's take a look at what the data says. So let's just start with the biggest question right out of the gate, the one from the first study. Can a piece of technology really change your aura? I mean, it's a pretty wild claim, right? So let's dig into the evidence they presented. Okay, before we jump into the results, we gotta get on the same page about a key concept here, the human biofield. Now, according to these studies, this is a field of energy and information that surrounds and even passes through our bodies. This idea is absolutely central to everything we're about to look at. All right, so let's get into our first piece of source material. This section is all about trying to measure the human aura, and more importantly, to see if it can change. We're going to explore the visual evidence that was presented in this first study. So how did they actually run this thing? Well, they had 16 people come in for a 3-hour session where they were exposed to a 32-unit light system. But the really key part is how they measure the results. They used a device called an Aura Video Station 7, which the study says measures electrodermal activity, your skin's electrical response, and then uses that data to generate these aura images. And now for the good stuff, the results. The study reported some really dramatic shifts in what they called the participants' energy fields. So let's take a look at some of the before and after scans they published. Okay, here is our first example. This is from participant 1. On the left, you've got the before scan. You see a mix of blues, greens, some yellow. But then look at the right, the after scan. It's a totally different picture. Just this bright, vibrant yellow-orange. The change is, well, it's pretty obvious. And this is where it gets really interesting. The study didn't just show the pictures, it interpreted them. For this person, the researchers described the shift as moving from analytical to playful and intellectual. So they're directly connecting these color changes to a person's mental and emotional state. Let's move on to participant 2, and you can see a very similar pattern here. The before image is this deep, solid green. And the after shot, it shifts to that same bright yellow-orange we just saw with the first person. For this participant, the study's interpretation was a shift from structured and social to optimistic and expressive. So you start to see a theme emerging in the report where they're suggesting a consistent move toward what they describe as more positive, open states of being. But hold on, the changes weren't all exactly the same. Take a look at participant 9 here. The before scan is this deep indigo and blue, but after the session, it transforms into this really vibrant green. And the interpretation for this one, the report called it spiritual and creative expansion. So this just goes to show how the study was linking different color changes to different kinds of reported growth or shifts in energy. I mean, seeing these images, the visual evidence is pretty striking. But it definitely begs a much bigger question, doesn't it? Are these changes just skin deep? Is this just a reflection of a change in your skin's electrical response? Or could there be something happening at a much deeper biological level? And you know what? That question is the perfect bridge to the second part of our analysis, because another study was done that tried to look much, much deeper. We're talking all the way down to the cellular level. So to understand this next study, we need a super quick science lesson. They used a technique called electrochemical impedance spectroscopy. I know, it's a mouthful, but the idea behind it is actually pretty simple. It just measures how easily a tiny electrical current can pass through your cells. And in this study, they used that measurement as a stand-in for cellular health. So the goal of this second experiment was really direct. They wanted to measure if there was any change in the electrical conductivity of human cheek cells after being exposed to the light system. That's it. And here is the big headline finding from that cellular study, a reported 61% increase in the conductivity of those cheek cells. And get this, that result was after only 30 minutes of exposure. Now this is where the data gets really counterintuitive. You would think longer exposure, better result, right? But the study actually found the opposite. That 30-minute session produced the strongest biological response, while longer sessions from 1 to 8 hours actually showed way less significant changes. And this chart from the report makes it crystal clear. You can see that huge spike at 30 minutes with the 61% increase. But after that, the effect drops off pretty dramatically. It's a classic less is more situation, according to this research. And the study didn't even stop at the cheek cells. The researchers also reported finding measurable improvements in the electrical conductivity of isolated human DNA samples. I mean, that suggests the effects could be reaching down to our most fundamental biological level. Okay, so we've looked at claims of changing auras on one hand, and we've seen hard data on cellular conductivity on the other. So what does it all mean when you put it together? Let's try to connect the dots and pull together the main findings from both of these studies. All right, so let's just do a quick recap of everything the research reported. We saw the visual shifts in people's aura colors, which the study interpreted as a move toward emotional balance. Then, the second study reported that huge 61% jump in cellular conductivity, and weirdly, that shorter exposure times seemed to be better. And finally, it even hinted at improvements at the DNA level. So, after going through all this material, we're left with a really big question. These studies are suggesting that there are measurable changes happening at both this, energetic level and at the cellular level. It really makes you wonder, could technologies like this actually be the future of energetic wellness? It's a fascinating thought to end on.